What are the implications of a growth versus a fixed mindset on our communication? Hello and welcome to Psychology of Communication. My name is Gerhard. I'm a psychologist from Hamburg, Germany, specialized in communication psychology in international, intercultural, and multilanguage contexts. Carol Dweck's theory of a fixed versus a growth mindset has already become a staple in pop psychology. Let me give you a short summary. Carol Dweck is a professor of psychology at Stanford University. She started doing research on learned helplessness among human beings. Learned helplessness initially started, I think, in the 1970s to be researched with laboratory animals, small animals. Of course, the experiments are not very nice, not very ethical. Small animals were receiving unpredictable electroshocks in their cages. The result being that due to the unpredictability, they retired to a corner of the cage and showed no more exploratory behavior, even after the shocks subsided. The same could be observed with human beings. Well, of course, there were no, hopefully, experiments with human beings in cages. But the analogy is, if in your early childhood especially, you got a traumatic experience, for example, after singing at school or reciting poetry or dancing, somebody made fun of you publicly, shamed you, this incidents may have served as a potent electroshock that made you stop any further exploratory activities in that area. So many of us stopped certain activities at a certain age because we came to the conclusion that we are not good at it. Now, Carol Dweck's contribution was to see the connection between this type of self-helplessness in certain areas, first academic areas, and our implicit theories of intelligence and personality. So what is an implicit theory? It's how we ourselves think about our intelligence, our personality, and implicit is often that it's not conscious to us all the time. So we need to tap into this. So the question is, how do you think? Is your intelligence more or less stable, innate, or is it something that you can improve over time by training? The same goes for our personality. Now, if you believe that your intelligence is something fixed and your abilities are something that cannot be substantially improved, then any event of failure is like a death sentence for that specific activity, because it shows that you have no prospects of ever becoming good at it. So for somebody with a fixed implicit theory of intelligence, that is, I believe that my intelligence cannot be improved, and also in a specific area like dancing, singing, playing a musical instrument, or math, learning a foreign language, telling jokes, public speaking, and so on, then probably I will take this as a diagnosis of my real abilities. And there is no sense in further pursuing it and exposing my own inabilities to others. So people with a fixed mindset, they believe their personality and intelligence cannot be substantially changed. They try to protect themselves by not letting anybody see that they are not competent in certain areas, and they tend to focus on those areas where they are good at. Now, what are the implications for our communication? Of course, those implicit theories of personality and intelligence, they apply to different areas of our life, maybe differently. So you may have a growth mindset, that is, you believe you can change certain abilities or personality traits, but not others. So lots of us, for example, as I have observed, and because it was my master's thesis at the University of Hamburg, in music playing or singing, many of us have a strong inclination to believe in the fixed theory of intelligence. We believe in talent. So there's genius in music making, and either you have it or you don't have it. So either you have a beautiful voice or you don't. Either you have a musical ear or you don't. And because our society focuses on like the great man theory, like the great musicians, the great composers, the stars, and they have something that was given to them that we typically don't observe how they were trained. Even somebody like Mozart was considered a child prodigy. We typically don't read his biography and learn how his father, Leopold, who also was a musician and composer in his own right, trained him systematically in this. So without all the training, the child prodigy Mozart probably wouldn't have turned out the overnight sensation in classical music. And the same goes for lots of other virtuosos today or famous musicians. And the problem is, if our society in certain areas believes in the notion of giftedness and talent, then if we as children don't show initial signs of success, then we tend to accept that we are not born for that. In some other areas, society is more open to the growth mindset. Now, what are areas that pertain to our communication? For example, our voice. Is it pleasant, unpleasant? Is it powerful, weak? Our pronunciation, can we be easily understood or not? So many areas of our communication also tend to be viewed as our personality, so my own voice. And so therefore, it's easy to accept failure as something permanent. That's also why most of us have some kind of apprehension talking in public, giving interviews, making videos, because we know, or we think we know, that there's not much we can do about it. So if I expose myself on camera and people judge me as not being photogenic, having a boring voice, not being able to pronounce clearly, and so on, then we take this as the final judgment. Now, what are the pitfalls of this theory? Of course, the remedy would be, well, you should switch to a growth mindset. Now, the problem, as I understood from criticism of Carol Dweck's research, is that there were apparently done studies with a so-called growth mindset intervention. The idea that you can switch people from a fixed to a growth mindset by having them do something very shortly in a few minutes or half an hour. Now, I'm of course skeptical that that can have really such a big impact. So it's not easy to switch from a growth to a fixed mindset on a long-term basis. Yes, there were some manipulations during an experiment. Maybe you can change somebody from a growth to a fixed mindset by exposing, or the other way around, by exposing the person to a small film, highlighting one or the other. For example, you can show them a film about how great people actually trained, what hard labor went into their success. But in the end, And this effect will be overshadowed by other stimuli you get in society. And if the talent and genius hypothesis is prevalent, then you will forget the small segment you saw about Mozart's childhood. Now, of course, you could permanently do this by training yourself, reading maybe every day material that reminds you of the growth mindset. For example, you can make it a habit of studying maybe 5 minutes a week biographies of great men, and especially focusing on how they were trained. So this may be more stable if you do this. Also, you could try to get more objective feedback. So if you make regular videos of yourself communicating, and try to experiment, then you will see that sometimes you are a bit better and sometimes you are a bit worse. So if it's only a matter of giftedness, then I should be always at the same bad level. But if in experimentations, sometimes I have a better effect, I speak better than on other occasions, then I need to study what specifically did I do and that I had a better effect. And then the logic is, well, then I can increase that improvement if I focus on the things that help me. So I highly recommend to read Carol Dweck's books. I personally prefer her more academic writings. The first book is called Self Theories, I believe. It's a short academic book, but there's also her book Mindset, a global bestseller. But I suggested it to many, and lots of people came back with the feedback that it contains lots of fluff, which is typical for self-help books. So if you just want to have the theories and the research, then you go with her older academic book. What are your impressions and experiences? Please share them here in the comment section. I wish you much success and see you next week. Bye bye.